here. It's always how it works is we had it all set up perfectly yesterday, and then all of a sudden everything shut down right before we started going live streaming. But
Yeah.
welcome to our live stream with Cody and Joe. For those of you who don't know, my name is Joe Skipper with Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp Realty out of Oregon. I'm with Cody Wilhelm with Residential Mortgage, and Cody, I'll let you take it away and
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself. Then we'll get into what we're doing.
Yeah. Awesome. Appreciate it. So happy to be here. I'm excited about this. So I'm with Residential Mortgage. I've been a loan officer in the mortgage business for the last 10 years. Married with 3 wonderful children, and yeah, always enjoying this crazy industry that we're in and getting to experience a lot of different unique situations. So I'm excited to be on here with you and kind of share some of those experiences and have an opportunity to give a little bit of an insight on what you and I see each day, just outside of the buying and selling homes, kind of more on the inside, how the hot dog's made.
For sure. No, and I think to get us started on kind of why we wanted to do this was exactly that. Cody and I had met up. We met up a couple months ago
Yeah.
and met and saw that there was a lot of, especially in this type of market, there was a lot of people that had tons of questions because we went from an extremely low interest rate and a crazy market in that end, and now it's crazy on the other end of these high interest rates. People are asking all sorts of questions of, how do I buy now? Like, how do I get into a home that I used to be able to afford, months ago? Long story short, we were like, well, why don't we just we have our own meetings and we talk about things regularly. Why don't we just do it online and let people
Yeah.
kind of jump in where they want to jump in? So
Yeah. Yep, and it makes sense too, because I think that there's a lot of good information that's not easy to obtain. You can search for it, you can find it out there, but it's not very readily accessible. So that's kind of, I think, something that we're both excited about, with being able to present some of this information as a easy to consume way for people that are either in the market now, or maybe they're thinking about it in a couple of years, whatever it is, because it's obviously the biggest purchase you can make in your lifetime. So having as much information, I think, is really good. And I think that over time, we've kind of started to see that everybody wants to get more information before they jump into something. That's why YouTube and social media is the way that it is, because it's easy to find that stuff. So
for sure. And it's like, we just, like I said, when the rates change so fast, when it was so low, buyers didn't have a chance to even learn about anything. It was like, hey, get into a house, get into a house, get into a house, and sellers
yeah.
were like, you can charge whatever you want and they're going to get into the house. So I think now it's at this time where buyers, like you said, are taking their time to say, what can I afford? What is this?
Right.
How does this all make sense in my life? And how do I navigate the real estate process? And
Yeah.
you and I navigate it every day, and we take for granted that we see it all. And a lot of people make these purchases 1, 2, 3 times in their entire life
Hmm.
and don't know how to get into it. And especially with these rates, you hear the news say XYZ and you freak out. And then,
Yeah.
so this is just a place where we can uh, hopefully answer questions for people. Anyone that, has any questions, particularly about them, we're okay answering.
Hmm.
Just generic things. We'll cover some of the top questions that we get in this thing. And I think like our structure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, we were just going to we'll go over the local stats week to week. This will be a Wednesday, every Wednesday at noon thing. We'll go over stats week to week. I'll go over the real estate stats for the Portland metro area and Salem, Polk and Marion County. And then I'll let you do your thing with
Hmm.
what mortgage rates are doing for the week. And then we'll just go on to some of the topics that, we get asked either regularly or we got asked the week prior
Yeah.
or whatever that might be, to kind of open up some people's eyes to maybe opportunities that they have, or, maybe to hold off on selling, or maybe to hold off on buying, if we start
Hmm.
seeing something or a trend in the market that, maybe goes that way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, and I know
so
you probably get asked a lot of the same questions, just like I do. So it's,
mhm.
sometimes those things that seem so every day to us, because we're in it all the time, are some of the biggest questions that people will have, just because they don't know. And you can only find so much. If you do a Google search on certain a topic or whatever, you're going to get 20 different answers,
For
and
sure.
sometimes they don't really give you an answer. It's just keeps you
Yeah.
going in a little bit of a circle. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, if
um
you're cool with it, I'm gonna dive right into some of
yeah.
my stats, unless
Yep.
you got anything to say before we get
No, I was
going.
just going to see, I mean, I got a little chance to introduce myself, so I didn't know if you wanted a chance there to kind of share anything about you, or if you're good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good right now.
Okay.
We'll they'll get to know us. Hopefully, it's probably just our parents that are on right now anyway, so they know. Like,
Yeah,
but
if
as
we're
time goes
lucky.
on, we'll they'll get to know us. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll just cover the Portland Metro stats that I saw and what basically like we may adjust this as people need, but I'm just
Mhm.
going to cover the week to week and how they adjusted. But for Portland Metro area, the new listings went up to 546 this week. So that basically what that means is that there are 546 new listings as of this week, which was a 20% decrease from last week. The days on market are slightly down to 37 days. Pending sales are about 2179. So basically pending sales are what went under contract over this last week, and that's about a 4% drop since the week prior. Average sales price in Portland was 605,000, and that's a 4% increase. We'll start to see kind of that as the weeks go on. We'll see that kind of go up and down, as you know.
Yeah.
But the Polk and Marion County stats, so that's like the Salem Kaisers, the Monmouths, the Dallases. They had 78 new listings this week. That was a 1.3% bump since last week. The days on market are about 43 days. So, in the Portland Metro and the Valley, we're starting to see days on market increase just in general. A month. It used to be, you sold a house within a few days, and now we're starting to see, as you can see in Portland and in the Polk and Marion counties, we're seeing in the month and higher for depending on the house you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pending sales are at 384, which is a slight increase, and the average sales price down there is a pretty significant gap. Is the average sales price down there is 397, 900, and
Okay.
that was a slight drop since last week. So I'll pass it on to you, and we'll kind of talk about that and kind of encompass it all,
Yeah.
what those numbers mean, and then I'll pass it on to you, and we can kind of talk generically about those. But
Yep. Yep. That sounds good. So as far as interest rates go, I mean, this last year and a half, well, I guess you could take it really back to early COVID. So 2020 has been the most volatile I've seen. It's normally the interest rates are pretty flat on any given day, where it's a slow trend up or a slow trend down. So these last couple of years, it's been quite the roller coaster. Whether it's going down or up, it's just you can't really plan on anything. So like this week, we have seen the interest rates. Well, starting like with last week, we've seen the rates jump up rather quickly. Today we actually had a decent drop, but the average 30-year fixed mortgage, so it's kind of combining all the 30-year loans, is at 7.75 as of today. So that it's going to factor in what type of loan you're doing, credit scores, all that. So it's just giving you a general average, but we're at 7.75. I know the Mortgage Bankers Association, which is a group that I follow too, just because they give a lot of they project what they think that the rates are going to look like in the economy and everything. What they're projecting for the end of this year is that the average 30-year rate is going to be at 7.2. So that's obviously not to be taken as fact, but that's just their projection based on all the data and everything that they collect. It has been revised, right? Like their outlook on rates a year ago was very different than it is now. Now it's kind of a lot more in line with where things are at. Whereas say a year ago, their outlook was a lot more that rates were going to come down quicker. Now it's their projection to go through 2025. At the end of 2025, they're expecting or projecting the 30-year rate to be at 5.5%. So you keep hearing the Fed, or at least I keep hearing the Fed talking about higher for longer. That's kind of the new catchphrase for them, which is just implying that the rates could be higher for longer. So it's now just getting used to it and figuring out different ways that we can navigate it as lenders, and you, Joe, as a real estate agent, with negotiating. How does that work in the current environment that we're in? Because it's different, right? It's not 2% rates, but this is also just kind of the reality of the housing market and the economy and everything else. It's like there's sometimes that are awesome, and then there's sometimes that aren't as great, but that doesn't mean that you can't still get a really good deal. I mean, just like the stats that you're mentioning there with prices, homes being on the market longer, that could mean that there's price drops. That could mean that, sellers are a little more negotiable with stuff. So mortgage rates, we're still seeing them kind of stay in that high 7, low 8 kind of average range. So that's kind of where they're at, and anticipating that they'll probably still be there for a little bit. But the projection is that they will eventually start to work their way back down. And a lot of it's just based on inflation right now. So,
Yeah, and that's like, well, it's funny you say that because we had talked about an article that I read that the magic number for buyers to say when the rates, this was when the rates were like low sevens, and the buyers like magic number to jump back into the market was 5.5. So they did a survey on
oh,
buyers
yeah.
and said, what's the rate that's going to make you go for it? And it's funny that they're mentioning in 2025, the rates
Yeah.
will be about that when buyers start going in. But
Mm-hmm.
piggybacking on that though, those predictions change, as like
Yeah.
they, like you just said earlier, you were like, they were predicting they were going to drop faster. And they still could. But I think that what we're finding now is that you just, the rates are what they are. And if you're able to buy and get into the market, then you got to get into the market when you can. Yeah, that it's just a funny that Cody mentioned the rate was 5.5. I don't know if you guys see it or not, but I don't know if Cody dropped off, but he'll come back on when he can. But yeah, I read that article, but something to think of when we go over these stats week to week is that not to take them with a grain of salt, because you're going to see a week to week fluctuation in the rates like every other every other week up and down, and so you can't take that as the sole reason of why you either sell or buy, because we'll see next week that the prices may drop or the prices may go up. So you really have to focus on that trend line and see where the trends are going. And what we're seeing is really, people ask like, are prices increasing? Prices aren't increasing and they're stabilizing, but they're still, like I just read a report this morning that the prices are still going up nationally. So we'll just watch that trend line, and we'll start watching that go that route and see what happens with that. But yeah, it's just kind of watch the trends, see what happens. Cody will be here to kind of predict what markets can do, and Cody has a lot of things that he can do with those rates. I know we hear a lot about um, can I get in? Like, I can't get in at 8%. I can't get in at 7.5%, and I can't get in at 20% down. And so, Cody's a great resource, and there's a lot of great lenders out there that'll be good resources to show you what you see on that superficial level is not necessarily what you can do. A lot of lenders can do a lot of different things. So moving on. Just a couple questions that we commonly get that Cody and I wanted to address, and hopefully he'll be back to address that. But he's having technical difficulties. But yeah, a couple of the main questions that I get from buyers and sellers right now is it smart to wait to sell or buy, or just go for it right now? And it's a great question. Let me see if Cody can get on here. You on there, Cody?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I had a call that came in, and I forgot to put it in do not disturb mode.
It's
So
very selfish, but
yes.
no, we were just talking, I was just talking about the weekly rates, and you'll probably add on to this, but the weekly rates are going to fluctuate. Everything's going to go up and down to the week to week, but we want to see what the trend line is going to be and the predictions. Having said that, the predictions are the predictions. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the rate. There's an election coming up, a national election, which will affect things. There's all sorts of, there's wars, there's politics, there's everything that's involved that will make that either go up or down. No one predicted that we'd be at 2.75%, but we had COVID and then it happened. So, I think it's good to pay attention to this stuff. But I think like what my overall theme was is like, if you've got to buy, then you need to buy and figure out how to do that. If you have to sell, you need to sell and figure out how to do that in this market. Because what we found is that if you start predicting this trend, we talked about it yesterday, is like, for example, we looked at Sun River Homes years ago and like, oh man, maybe the prices will drop. And now the prices have like doubled in Sun River, to buy a home. And so, if you're waiting for that, yes, you could win in a short term. You could win if you said, hey, I'm waiting till 2025 for the 5.5% rates. You could win, but there's so much unknown that if you sit there for that amount of time and then it stays at 7 or goes higher, then you're stuck. So it's kind of, the question I was addressing was, people ask, do I buy or sell right now, or do I wait? And I've always said, it's like, if you need to sell, it's time to sell, and let's figure out how to do it and get you the highest return on your home. And when it's time to buy, it's time to buy, and figure out how do we get into the market at these rates with someone that can help, and maybe you can tap into that. You know, we were, you know, when you were taking your phone call on a live stream, we were talking about like, do you get, you know, people are like, I don't have 20% down and I can't
Mhm.
afford an 8% rate because that's what the news tells me that I have to get into a home. So maybe you could go on of like
Yeah.
what are options out there, just generic options that people, so to just let people know like, hey, this isn't you don't have to just do that,
Right.
or bust.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that kind of piggybacking on what you're talking about there before I jump into, say, down payment options, is it's recent enough in people's memory of 2008 when the housing market just kind of fell through the bottom. And then I think when things are not lining up right, that's always the concern, is that like, well, what if it is the wrong time for me and I just lose everything? Um, Obviously we can't predict what's going to happen. That was a pretty extreme thing, but I think that it's, whether it sounds cheesy or not, it's like if the time is right for you to buy, then it's the right time, like
Yeah.
regardless of what the market's doing. Because to me, if you wait for home prices to come down or interest rates to come down, you're never really going to time it right. I mean, maybe you get lucky and you do, but in general, I think it's more of a waiting until you are ready financially, right? Like you're saving up for the down payment and you've put a pin on the date of June of 2025. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to have enough saved by then and I'm going to be ready to go and jump into it, regardless of what the market looks like. Obviously, you got to make a good decision, but I think that's where the hang up can be, is just waiting for rates, waiting for prices that are out of everybody's control. And it's such a hard thing to time. I mean, it's like,
Hmm.
that's tough. But um, going back to, say, down payment options, a lot of the time there's the assumption that 20% down is needed. That's kind of the barrier of entry to get in and buy a home, which is no longer the case. I know that kind of used to be the thing it made a lot more sense. You got a much better deal on your mortgage. Now, I mean, I'd say over 60% of the time, people are coming in with less than 20% down, because on a conventional loan, there's an option for 3% down. If you're a first time home buyer, or you make under a certain amount of money per year, they'll allow you to put just 3% down. FHA will do 3.5% down minimum. USDA is no down payment. There's also state assistance programs that will cover your down payment. So there's a lot of options to be able to get into the home with with uh, you still might have to come up with something, but it's not the 20%. It's not like you need to save up $100,000 to be able to just get your feet in the door.
Yeah.
We've done lots of zero down loans for people that are they're great loans. I mean, they're backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA. These are not like sketchy,
Hmm.
like, hey, good luck, hopefully everything works out. Like these are the same loans that you're getting with people putting down 20%. So there's a lot of options and a lot of number crunching that kind of goes into it. That's not necessarily anything fancy. It's really just, hey, if I put down 20%, what do my numbers look like versus if I
Yeah.
put down 5%? Because you might have the money to do that, but does it financially make the most sense with your goals, short term and long term, to use all that money towards putting it down? Or maybe you can leverage some of that money and invest with it or
Yeah,
renovate or whatever it might be. So there's
for
a
sure.
lot of flexible options when it comes to down payment.
And that kind of leads me. We had talked about, and we hear a lot in the industry about the 2-1 buy down.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's pushing it as this miracle loan product, and
Yeah.
I do think it does have excellent benefits in certain ways. But what does it mean for a buyer? Just to explain,
Mm-hmm.
what does the 2-1 buy down mean, and then what can it do for a buyer that, say, like, we have a loan of, and I don't know if you have an example or not, but
Yeah.
just, yeah, if you want to explain a little bit about the 2-1 buy down.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have, where did I put that? I actually do have one that I was working on earlier. It was for one of your listings. So,
Oh, nice.
um, but okay, so the breakdown, you have your permanent buy down, which is, you are, during the process of your loan, you are choosing to pay an additional fee to have a lower interest rate, right? So you can choose to have a lower rate. Say your interest rate today was 8%. Um, you can take a 7.5% rate. You're just going to have to pay for that, because you're essentially you're paying for a rate that is more costly than what the market is giving for no cost. So that's a permanent rate buy down. That means that when you do that, your rate, say you did that scenario, right? You bought it down to 7.5%. As long as you have that loan, your rate is going to be 7.5%. The temporary buy down, that 2-1 buy down that you're talking about, that one is you're starting out with your 8% interest rate. And the first year that you have the mortgage, it's 2% lower. So instead of being at 8%, the first year you're at 6%. And then the second year, you're going to be at 7%. And then the third year and every year that you have that afterwards, you're going to be at 8%. So it is a temporary way to reduce your monthly payment, which is kind of similar to, in a way, like an adjustable rate mortgage, right? The only difference with this one is exactly what that looks like. And it's not changing with the market. It's on a set path. And the idea is that you're able to get in there for significantly less. So I was actually working up one of these for your listing there in SIO. And so purchase price, asking price, $875, right? So the rate on there, 8.125 on this scenario. Your total payment, this is just estimated payment, but it comes out to $5,757, right? That's putting down 20%. So if you did this temporary buy down, your first year would be $4,813 a month. So that's like $900 a month less that you have for that first year.
Yeah.
And then the second year, it's $5,275. So it's still another $500 less than what that third year is going to be. So it's a way to be able to ease your way into, and everybody is expecting and hoping that interest rates will lower, right? So that's kind of the appeal with it as well, is you're getting 2 years at a lower rate with the hope that when that time comes, when things are going to start adjusting, you can refinance into a fixed 30-year rate and you don't have to worry about it. So it's just a way of being able to kind of ease some of that payment for the first couple of years there. So it really does make a huge difference. And I will say too that the way that is structured is coming from the seller, right? So it's something that has to be negotiated. So if you are in that position, definitely make sure that you're talking with your real estate agent, hopefully it's Joe. Talk with your lender, talk with your real estate agent to make sure that is structured from the get-go. Because you can't just, like, you're in the middle of the transaction, you can't go, oh, hey, I want to do that buy down thing. That is going to be something that needs to be coordinated and agreed upon by all parties so that it's done the way that the rules say that they should be done.
Yeah. And just like really quickly, that doesn't, a lot of people will say, well, I can do a 2-1 buy down so I can afford X amount for those first couple of years. So now that I was able to afford a $500,000 home, I can now afford a $750,000 home. And that is not correct. It is, you still have to be approved for the full amount that you're going to pay. You're just getting a cheaper payment in the front end, right?
Exactly. Yep. So it's not a risk. It's not a risky loan by any means, because like you said, you're qualifying somebody based on that 8.125% loan, right? So you're signing off on the worst case scenario, giving them an option to have a better scenario for those first couple of years. So,
and which kind of like, it leads me into, one of the common questions that I get when I'm selling is, do you give a closing cost credit or do you lower the price? And, it's interesting because you think, and really as a seller, it's 6 one way, half dozen the other, because if you give 15,000 in closing costs to a buyer, it's still coming out of that end profit. If you lower the price $15,000, it's still coming out of your profit in the end. And so I think it does have a significant impact on the buyer, and you can correct me or you can disagree if you don't think that's right. But I do think that a buyer being given closing cost credit, it could potentially help them to afford something they couldn't, they couldn't get in with little to no down. Whereas like, as a selling agent side, you list a house for 500,000 and you lower it $15,000 to 485. Do you bring in a new pool of buyers? Do you really have that drive? Maybe not, depending on your price and how much you drop it. But if I say you're listed at 500,000 and you offer 15,000 in closing cost credit, like what's that going to do for the buyer? So if you want to kind of explain what a buyer can do with that money and how that impacts them in a positive way.
Yeah, yeah.
more so than the price.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that, because I think that when you look at it, if you're home shopping and you see that a home dropped the price by 15,000, that's obviously going to catch your eye and like,
Hmm.
oh, hey, nice, this could be a nice little a deal that I'm getting here. But
Hmm.
when you start to break down the numbers, that's where I think it starts to kind of separate itself from, is it worth dropping the price by 15,000, or is it worth to give a $15,000 credit? Because, and it's subject to, right, like everybody's going to have their preference on what they would want the outcome to be. But if you're looking at it just strictly based on your monthly numbers that are impacted by that, you drop the price by 15,000, and you might, I don't have the number in front of me, but say it drops your payment by $80,000, or excuse me, $80 a month or $100 a month, whatever that
Hmm.
might be, right? Is that enough for you to take your $15,000 out of pocket and apply it towards closing costs? A lot of it is really just breaking it down and saying, okay, here's how much you're saving each month by that, versus here's how much you have that you can put towards the home, you can have in your savings account. So maybe you don't use up every dollar that you have, gives you a little bit of a buffer. Um, Use it to buy down the rate. I mean, for that situation that we were talking about, using it for the 2-1 buy down, where you can now save, instead of saving $100 a month by having the price be lowered, you might save $800 for the first year every month, and kind of build on that. So
Hmm.
when you start to factor in, not just the interest rates, but interest in general, and how much you're paying on that, the difference between a $15,000 price drop is going to be a lot less than
Hmm.
having your interest rate be lower. So it's something that when that conversation comes up, I it's kind of simple, but also at the same time, just breaking it down to figure out what are the short term goals, what are the long term goals. Like, are you planning on being here forever, or is this a stepping stone and you're going to move in a couple years? Because that might sway one way or the other as well. But I think that there's a big advantage, in my opinion, to using the closing cost credit as opposed to dropping the purchase price. But um, the price drop is, I think, the natural way
Yeah,
to
the natural thought.
start things, because it's like, all right, well, it's not selling, I need to drop the price,
Yeah.
which is something unique in the home buying process, because like if you're selling a car, it's a little different. You can't be like, hey, I'm
Yeah.
going to give you a credit for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're buying a home, a lot of people don't realize too, especially first time buyers, that you have your down payment and that's always the main focus, but there's also closing costs, and those just keep going up each year as well, because you have everything goes up, and taxes and fees and everything. So there's a lot to consider. So getting any type of help from the seller, from different grants, stuff like
Yeah.
that, it really makes a difference, and it makes it more affordable for people.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's something that, and in the meantime, for our parents or who's watching to ask any questions, if you have any questions, just type them in now because we like to keep this try to keep it around 30 minutes, but
Yeah.
ask any questions right now. But yeah, on that topic of, marketing the home, and it may be something, it is something that I tell sellers to think about that maybe you already factor that in. Now
Mm-hmm.
buyers are having such a hard time getting into this market and they're having such a hard time affording anything that pricing it in a good price that you're happy with, but also offering X amount in closing cost credit or whatever they want to do with it for a 2-1 buy down, whatever they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that could make it super appealing rather than just have it at a good competitive price, if
Sure.
you're willing to do that. So it's just something that we have to now start playing around with this stuff because, as a selling agent during COVID, you could just literally, and I had videos on it, you put a sign in the yard and it sold for
Yeah.
$100,000 over asking price. And and buyers were just like, you've got to pay it, like figure
Yeah.
it out. And buyers could pay it because they were getting rates at 2.75%. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing now, and you're seeing in the lending world, is we've got to help our clients be creative in how they get into a home and out of a home, because it's
Yep.
not as simple as putting a sign in the yard. You have to be paired up, one, with the knowledgeable lender and a knowledgeable agent that kind of navigates that market and knows what they're doing. Because I think, as you know, in this career, at least in the real estate side, very easy to get into, very hard to stay in, because
Yes.
when the getting's good, everyone's in there and every agent can do it, and you can put a sign out and you make it all cute and look
Yeah,
good. But
right.
when times are hard is when you need someone that can guide you, and a good lender that can guide you to say, here's how we can navigate this crazy market. So
Hmm. Yep,
yeah.
and you can see too, like to your point there, with when the market is going good, um, it's easy, right? Like
Hmm.
you're just kind of, the machine is just moving along. It's when things start to get harder, like they are now, where there's creativity. You got to get a little more. You got to kind of pull your boots up a little bit and figure out, like, okay, what can we do in this current market that's making it difficult, right? Like there are always different ways and different angles to approach it. And even though the rules are all still the same, it's now going, okay, well, maybe looking at a rehab loan, or the temporary buy down. Like, I
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 10 years, and this is the first time, last year, when a temporary buy down, the first time I even heard of it, I'm like, what? This sounds amazing, but it also sounds crazy, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
there, everybody starts to get a little bit more creative, and you can see how it really pays to have a good real estate agent, a good lender, home inspector, like a whole team of people that can
Yeah.
walk you through that. Because it's a simple process in the idea of, like, pick out a house that you like and get your financing, but there's so many moving parts that,
Yeah.
I think can easily get overlooked, and hopefully we can shed some light on some of that stuff too.
For sure. And that's kind of, why we're doing that. And this leads me, like, we don't have any questions today, Cody. I
Mhm.
don't know if you want to add anything else, or if we want to just kind of go into closing this bad boy out for
Yeah,
the first time. But yeah, it's just kind of why we're, I think, providing value to our buyers and our clients and our sellers, that they can take this knowledge and use it or not use it, or go with a different lender or a different agent. But we just kind of want to be out there helping people figure out navigating this market, because it's difficult for a lot of different reasons that were, not so difficult for sellers a few years ago, but now it is difficult for
yeah,
sellers because they're in a rate at 3%, but they really want to upgrade, or they really need to downgrade, or they really need to move. And how do you navigate all that stuff, because it's not easy anymore. And
yeah,
so I think that's why, we're going to do this weekly. We're going to have a weekly thing at noon on Wednesdays. So if you have friends, family friends, anyone that just wants to know more about the lending process, or a particular topic that they want to get into, reach out to us. Like, we're going to be doing this weekly, and we're totally happy at taking any questions through the week, and then we can put them on this live stream so that everyone can get the answers. But yeah, that's why I don't want to do it, and that's what we're looking to do. So
yeah.
yeah, anything you want to add to that?
Um, I mean, the only thing I was really thinking was, last night was Halloween, and did you come away with a good amount of candy?
We actually, yes, sold. Well, we didn't get rid of all of the candy we were going to give out. So
Oh,
we have two big
you came
bags,
away with your
but
own
it's not
candy.
good. It's not going to be
Yeah,
good. It's not going to be
yeah.
good at all.
Oh,
How about you
that's
guys?
great. We found a couple houses that gave away some full size candy bars, so that's always
Yeah.
the ticket.
Christina
But
put some in Christina mixed them in with our pile of small candies. So some of the
oh,
kids got
nice.
lucky,
Yeah.
and some didn't get so lucky. But
All right.
But before next week, we are going to talk. So we did want to say that we are going to talk about assumable mortgages. Yeah. So
Yep.
it's another big topic, and just the gist of it is basically, someone you assume someone's mortgage. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunities out there. Again, it's a big advertising ploy by real estate agents to get a house sold in a better environment for the buyer. But we'll talk about that, and we'll go into detail. So if you want to know more about assumable mortgages, or have
Yep.
any family friends that want to know what that even means, and how you could get into a house at possibly 3% in this market,
Hmm.
um, it is a way to do things. So yeah, that's what I think you and I want to cover next week, and
Yep.
any questions that people have. This is
Yeah.
the debut of
Ah.
our live stream. We'll stay consistent with it and help people out with whatever they need through the week, and go over some stats, and kind of hopefully provide some benefit to people, and help them to
Yeah.
learn more about the market, or to just navigate their own sale or their own purchase. So
Yep, yep. I love it. I've already learned to put my phone in do not disturb mode when live streaming.
I
So,
know I had to wing it there for a little bit. It probably was bad if I look back on this.
yeah, I couldn't even
But
tell. I could see you talking, but I'm like, I don't know if he just sees a blank look on my face or what. But
no, it's good that we have, like, just probably our close family here. So hopefully
yes.
when we make it big, we'll have we'll have it
Yes.
dialed in, and everyone will, and there will be minimal mistakes.
Right.
But
Yes.
okay, cool, man. Well, thanks for
Great.
doing this,
Thank
and we'll
you.
see you next week. And everyone who was here, thanks for joining in, and hopefully you'll
Yeah.
join us next week. Tell your family and friends about us, and hopefully we'll get you some info on real estate on a weekly basis.
Yeah. I love it.
But
Appreciate you guys watching.
okay,
And thank you, Joe, for setting this all up, man.
okay, thanks, Cody.
All right. We'll see you.
See ya.